At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner. However you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. And that's what running's all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
So let's talk some politics with two of the best. Joe Concha, Fox News contributor. His new book is The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big Beautiful Campaign, Unburdened by What Has Been. You can pre-order that thing. We need a big, beautiful reconciliation bill, too. Charlie Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor, Fox News contributor. Charlie, I just saw you on TV. What are you doing, Fox and Friends, on the weekend? It's busy. Busy guy.
Yes, and we concluded with a Zumba segment in which I had to dance.
I saw it. I watched it.
I wanted to get ahead of that before. I'm sure that between you and Joe, you could come up with some pretty good commentary about it.
Well, there's no question that you should enter the ballroom dancing contest.
He's Patrick Swayze.
I would like to. I think dignity is overrated, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I think you may have proven that, but I don't want to go too far because I love you. I did see it. There's a little TV right here in the studio in WABC. So let's Charlie, while you're on a roll here, talk to me about what you saw and what it means. Mike Johnson reelected as Speaker with a little push from Donald Trump. Seems to me what the big winner was here with the voters and Trump's agenda. But how do you see this story? What stuck out in your mind? Because it's a big story. I mean, if it had gone south on us, God knows what would have happened. No certification. Chuck Grassley would have been president on January 20th.
Yeah.
By the way,
no, I think that it underscores the fact that, they were playing a completely different game this time. The last time when Speaker Johnson first got selected, the stakes were a lot lower. Now, Republicans are looking at a future where you have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House, and they got real things that not only that they want to get done, but they can get done because they have the trifecta there. And so they were playing a very dangerous game. The second thing I think that it shows is that Donald Trump is in complete control of this party, and that Donald Trump was the guy that made it happen. And if you're going to pull Donald Trump off the golf course to settle a dispute among Republicans, it's a little bit like Dad turning the car around. You're probably in trouble.
Yeah, he was on a golf course. Now, I don't know, Joe Concha, do we know the sequence of events? I mean, I've heard, this story broke. I mean, the actual phone call, I think, was around 2 o'clock, but the story didn't break until after 3 o'clock. Aisha Hasney reported it on our show. I think that's the first time Fox had the story. But the point is, Nancy Mace brought them into a little room off the cloakroom, off the floor, got Trump on the phone, and Norman from South Carolina, who presumably is a friend of Nancy's from South Carolina, and Self from Texas, and Trump talked to him about the need to stop disrespecting the American voter. I mean, is there more chronicle to that, or what do we know?
So basically, Mason Johnson, as you said, they corralled the two holdouts into that hideaway office just off the House floor. And according to reporting as far as exactly what was said, and then this is, I would have guessed Mace probably fed this to reporters, Trump said, "We had the most historic election, and you guys are stepping all over it and being ridiculous." Trump went on to say, "I won all these states, but while Democrats are sticking together, you guys are screwing it all up. The American people want relief from the Trump agenda." And that's according to a source who granted anonymity to describe the call. So you two are all screwing it up is what Trump said. That got through to him. And the only holdout then was Thomas Massie, who, my questions for Massie are quite simple. If you don't want Speaker Johnson, then give me a name. Who do you want? And can that person get the votes? Or else it's Kevin McCarthy all over again. Republicans look completely chaotic and show that they can't govern. They went through all those different speakers, all those votes, CNN, MSNBC, champagne corks flying everywhere as far as they can't get it done. If Massey had a plan, I could respect that. And he's all over Twitter like every other minute talking about his principles. Well, principles are fine, but you also have to have a plan to go along with those principles and this thing called pragmatism. So if you don't have another speaker that can go in there, and I got to see who this person is, by the way, this magical person who could bring all these factions together and bring the Republicans in lockstep and get everything they want. I'm sorry, with a 3-vote majority, you're not going to get everything you want. So get in as many wins as you can and show you can govern, and then you could start to get what you want. But get Trump into office first before you do this stuff. It was, I liked what Newt Gingrich had to say. He goes like, this guy needs a psychologist, and it's true, or a psychiatrist, I meant.
Massey's would have elected Chuck Grassley as president. That's if they could, no certification. Guess what, Charlie? Do you know Massey?
Yeah, and I actually have a lot of admiration for Massey. He is, as Joe points out, obviously a very principled guy, and he fights a lot of these sort of lonely fights that nobody else is willing to fight. That I think are actually important. He does a lot of the. He fills the role of the old Ron Paul role in the House. He's usually if there's one guy that voted against some huge bipartisan bill, it was always Ron Paul, and nowadays it's Thomas Massey. And I obviously, Joe is exactly right about all of it. If you don't have an alternative, you're just sort of creating problems. But to hear Massey talking, of course, Massey voted for Johnson the first time. He hesitated to vote for him, but then ultimately voted for him the first time. Did not participate in what I think was a futile, idiotic effort when they got rid of McCarthy, just because there was no, it's the same problem with trying to do that now. Unless you have an alternative, unless you have a plan, then it's completely stupid. But if there's a guy who you will never be able to buy off to get a vote, it's Thomas Massey. And that is one of those things that I admire very much about him.
So now the new rules, Joe Concha, it would take nine votes to vacate the speaker's chair. New rules, and those rules passed yesterday after the vote. Didn't get much headline, but actually, that's a big deal. 9, the current rule from the Kevin McCarthy era was 1 vote. So now it's 9. So that insulates the speaker to a large extent.
It does. And still there are 217 Republicans in Congress. So 9 is still relatively a fraction of that number. But, yeah, you can't just have 1 or 2 rogue people say, I don't like this guy. He's got to go. And that's it. I would think that you have to have a little bit more of a coalition before you start removing speakers because, again, the only thing that results is chaos. And chaos is a ladder. And in this case, it could have been a ladder to forget Chuck Grassley as president. You could have had Hakeem Jeffries very easily become speaker. It was getting close there. And if 2 more Republicans decided that they wanted to join Massey, that's what would have happened. And then what happens to the Trump agenda? There is no agenda. That would have been just devastating.
By the way, in defense of Grassley, not for president, but in defense of Grassley, he's going to chair the Judiciary Committee. Big job. He's in his early 90s. And I had him on the show yesterday. And he was so good, so cogent, so sharp, and we were laughing back and forth. But he was in the Oval Office meeting years ago over ethanol. He's from Iowa, therefore ethanol. He started yelling at me, but wait, he wasn't done. After he got through yelling at me, he started yelling at Trump. It was awesome, raising his voice. Donald, you promised us. Oh, it was all. So whenever I have him on, I said, Senator Grassley, this is a wonderful interview, and you didn't yell at me once. And he comes right back, and he said, well, neither of us are in the Oval Office right now.
Well,
that's good.
He might be really, understandably, I understand why he supports ethanol, and he may be really, really wrong about ethanol, but in terms of a guy who has been fighting the great fight, one of the truly unsung heroes of Congress for decades has been Chuck Grassley. There is, and Democrats and Republicans, conservatives, liberals, everybody should appreciate what that man has done to expose wrongdoing in the government and to keep government in check. He's one of the few people who works from sun up to sundown, going after, using his oversight powers to go after rogue agents in the government and to keep them in check because, at the end of the day, they, members of Congress, are the only people, the only protection we innocent citizens have against a rogue federal government, and he works harder than anybody to protect us from that.
I couldn't agree more. You're 100% right. By the by, he, again, as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, he is a very strong supporter, and said this on the air last night, of Kash Patel to go over to FBI and Pam Bondi to go over to the Justice Department. Very strong supporter in order to, as to your point, Charlie, in order to root out corruption and various misdoings in those two agencies. I mean, he was very strong in his support for both of them. So I give Chuck Grassley a lot of credit. Let's take a quick break. I want to come back, talk a little bit more about the Trump agenda. And then, living in New York, it's just awesome. Totally awesome. I got a governor pushing something called congestion pricing. The whole city's against it. And then I got a Judge Merchan that if he doesn't want to throw Trump in jail, he wants to embarrass him by calling him a felon. It's unbelievable stuff here. Folks, we're talking to Joe Concha and Charlie Hurt. We'll be right back. I'm Kudlow.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
And we're talking politics with two of the best. Joe Concha, Fox News contributor. Joe's newest book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign. Joe, when's that out? Actually out in print?
We're looking at April right now. We're trying to get it out sooner, but the president was nice enough to give me 40 minutes just last week, and then the invitation came in. We're at Mar-a-Lago on New Year's Eve, and at first we were to the wrong table, like all the way in the back, and then we realized we were at the wrong table, and then realized that we were actually at the Trump table. So you had Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, obviously Donald Trump, Melania, J.D. Vance, his lovely wife Usha, and I could go on and on, but what a night. Wow. That beats all you can drink night at your dive bar in Hoboken, which is what we used to do back in the day. So fun stuff.
Yeah, I haven't had a drink in 30 years. We also have Charlie Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor and Fox News contributor. Charlie, I know you're not from New York, but, you're close enough. You were in New York today. I've got this dumb as dirt judge named Juan Merchan, who wants to bust Trump. Now, he's not going to jail him, but he does want to sentence him for this so-called hush money, which I think the Supreme Court gave him immunity for it. But there's a million things wrong with these decisions. The whole thing should be appealed. And he wants to embarrass Trump. That's all this is, so Democrats can call Trump a felon. And then the other one, I'm just going to throw it in, again, more New York stupidity. The governor, Kat Hochul, putting into place something called congestion pricing. Charlie, for the privilege of driving into New York, if you're above 60th Street and you drive through 60th Street, you're going to have to pay a toll. I don't know, whatever it is, $9 or $10. Her original thing was twice as much, which is just ruinous for small businesses, little trucks that come and go, EMS, ambulances, all that stuff, volunteer stuff. Utterly, it's like you can't make this stuff up. Whatever can hurt the city, they want to hurt the city, Charlie. It's just a killer.
Yeah, I think it is a perfect encapsulation of the Democrat Party and the way the Democrat Party operates. This is all a cash grab. This has nothing to do with anything but a recognition of the complete failure of Democratic administrations to deliver to voters and their constituents and the way they go, the only thing they care about fixing is grabbing more cash, and that's what this is. If Kathy Hochul actually gave a damn about her constituents, actually gave a damn about commuters, actually cared about the city or the state, what she would do, because this whole congestion pricing plan is designed supposedly to force people to ride the subway into the city. Well, you know what's going on in the subway right now? It's turned into an underground insane asylum where people are being burned alive on the subway, where 71-year-old ladies going to church are being attacked and mugged and beaten up by gangs of girls. If you actually cared about your constituents, what you would do is you would make the subway safe and efficient and a place that people wanted to ride into the city on, and that would solve your problem. You know what else would happen? You could probably collect more money if you actually started going after the fare beaters, the people that jump over the turnstiles. And these are also happen to be the criminals and the insane people who are lighting people on fire in the subway system. But the truth is, the Democrats that run the city, Kathy Hochul, the Democrats that run the state, they don't care about any of that. They don't care about the people. All they care about is ignoring all of the failures that have led to the subway system being a catastrophe. And what they want to do is get their money. And the way they get their money is to go after law-abiding people who are driving into the city to contribute economically to the city. And they're going after them because it's more fresh money to hide all of their incompetence and to pay their friends off in whatever city contract business they want to pay them off with.
Well, you know, it's a lot of money goes to the MTA, which is a corrupt agency. The more money the MTA gets, the more money they lose.
Totally corrupt.
They have layer after layer after layer of personnel, which they do not need. And as you say, they have subway cops. They have NYPD cops. They also have MTA-type cops. I don't know where they are. What's happened recently, as you noted, is just an appalling wave of crime. And Joe Concha, I just want to, Hochul, by the way, is just passed some kind of resolution or law that would ban natural gas use, which will drive up electricity prices. This is part of this goofy Democratic climate change stuff. New York is part of the Marcellus Shale, southwestern New York by the Pennsylvania border. If they had let that go through, and Cuomo was the first guy to ban it, and she stayed with that, if they had let that go through, you'd have a very prosperous New York, including a prosperous upstate New York. But I digress. The other point is this Judge Merchant thing, where he's just dying to embarrass Trump and permit Democrats to call Trump a felon for the next 4 years. I mean, it's unbelievable.
They could say we now have the first convicted felon president.
Yeah.
Right? That's why this is happening 10 days beforehand. And this only strengthens Trump. I know that sounds crazy, but we saw it during the campaign, right? Lawfare. Americans hate. I think some reasonable Democrats even hate it as well. Independents certainly do. So, yeah, they could go ahead and do this, but if that's all they got, then, well, obviously it didn't work after what we saw on November 5th. Let me get back to Hochul for a second. New York Post has a story out today. She spent $415,000 on private jet travel just last year, and she's going to lecture us about climate change? I don't think so. Now, let me put this in a political perspective, Larry and Charlie. More people are moving out of California, Illinois, and New York than any states in the country. And where they're going are Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, states like that. Now, come 2032, or 2030, I should say, there will be a census that's going to be redone. And if it's done correctly, well, Florida is projected to go from 30 to 33 electoral votes. Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, and North Carolina are also going to gain electoral votes, while California, Illinois, New York are going to lose electoral votes. What that means is that even if a Democrat wins the so-called blue wall, which Trump has won 2 of the last 3 times, but let's say the Democrat wins Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, it's not going to matter. Because as long as the Republican takes Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, and a state like Arizona, it's over. So this is the result of these policies. People are moving out, going to these states. They're sick of Democratic rule, especially in cities like San Francisco and New York, and they're going to red states, and they're going to make them more redder and more powerful in elections as a result. So, yeah, keep doing this, because this is going to give Republicans presidential elections in perpetuity.
Charlie, GOP is the Sun Belt party. and they pick up the working class in the industrial state. But as Joe just pointed out, GOP is the Sun Belt party. And these governors, Hochul and the others, Gavin Newsom, Pritzker, and so forth, either they don't understand it or they don't care. I can't figure it out.
I think they're so committed to their crazy ideas and their crazy and the corruption, quite frankly. And, they don't they're incapable of sort of recognizing the common sense agenda that, thanks to Donald Trump, the Republican Party has embraced. And because of that common sense agenda that we have because of Donald Trump, I really do think it's very possible that the Republican Party goes well beyond the Sun Belt and reaches into these new places. We saw it in this past election, and we've seen it in 2016. Excuse me, where traditional Democrat voters are leaving their ideologically crazy people and joining the common sense agenda of Donald Trump.
Yes, sir. You guys are both spot on. Joe Concha, thank you. Charlie Hurt, thank you, both of you. Terrific stuff. Appreciate it. Folks, we will take a break. And the other side, we're going to talk about the economy with John Carney of Breitbart News. I'm Kudlow. Be right back.